So now that we have a few storage accounts created, let's dig in and kind of get in there and work with them a little bit, do some things, upload some files, just generally get familiar with how I, as an administrator, will manage a storage account, the sort of things I'm going to do. So this is working with the contents of the storage account, not necessarily managing the storage account itself. We'll look at that a little bit later on. So to start with, I've got a couple of storage accounts here. And so I can click on any one of these storage accounts and it'll take me to the properties. And if I scroll down through the general properties of the storage account, you can begin to see where we start to manipulate the contents. So we've got our blobs, files, queues, and tables. Now, if I go to a blob only storage account, let's go back here. And so I'd made one intentionally that was blob only. You'll see obviously you don't have all those bits and pieces because it is a blob only storage account. And with a blob only storage account, you're creating only containers. That's the only thing that you get to create. So let's go back just to our standard storage account. And here we go. So we have our blobs, where we can come in and actually create a new container. We can also come in here and create some files. So these are file shares that I can create. I can create queues. We'll come back and just do this here in a second. And I can also create tables. So you can do all this essentially within the portal. So if I come in here to my blobs, create a new container, call it uploads, set the permission level. Now it's worth noting that the permission level, if it's private, then you have to essentially you need authentication of some sort to get access to the contents of this, whether that's through role-based access or through having a storage key. If it's anything but private, then you can have essentially anonymous access. So let's say you were using this to publish a website, for example. The files for a website, you can make them anonymous. Or maybe you've got media files you want to stream to anybody. You can make this anonymous with either a blob access level or a container access level. So we're going to go with private, hit OK. And so we've now got a container that we can now turn around and begin uploading blobs to. Now, a bit of a terminology point. In all the documentation around this, you'll keep hearing references to upload your blob, download your blob. For most people's use cases for this, a blob is a file. So in a lot of cases where you see, hey, here's let's upload a blob to a storage account, download a blob from a storage account, what they're really saying is upload a file, download a file. They don't always have to be files, but most of the time you're dealing just with files. So I can come into this container and I can upload blobs. So we'll select a file. I've got a video file that I dropped here earlier. And we'll click upload. Got some advanced options to the type, the size. We want a block blob, a page blob, or an append blob. And we go ahead and we upload the file. Now, if you'd worked with this in much earlier versions of the Azure portal, this is new functionality, relatively new functionality. This notion of being able to manipulate the contents of a container directly within the portal. Prior, you had to use an external tool like a Storage Explorer or PowerShell or something of that nature. So this is here. I can now delete this file, look at its properties, and just generally work with it. And then we can delete the container if you want to. So again, you've got a pretty rich set of admin tools available within the portal itself. But obviously, the portal is not the only way that you'll do this. You can come in here and use a tool like the Azure Storage Explorer. Now this is a free download, and in fact, if we come in here to my Azure portal and just go back to the containers, if I click Open and Explore, that'll actually prompt you to download the Azure Storage Explorer. So it's a pretty easy tool to find. Just go to the overview of any storage account. There's an Open and Explore button. You click it, click yes, it'll download the Storage Explorer for you. So assuming that's downloaded, we can now connect to our subscriptions, and I can connect using a couple of different ways. So I can connect straight to Azure, or I can use a connection string or one of the access keys. So I can get one of the primary or secondary access keys and know the name of the account. It'll just prompt me for that information for the account name, the key, and then how I want to connect. So there's a number of different ways that you can connect using a tool like Storage Explorer. The beauty of using the keys is that you don't need an Azure account in the storage account that you're managing. So for example, if you're a developer, you don't need an Azure account or permissions within Azure, within the portal, within the role-based access model to get access to a storage account. You can simply get the storage key from the administrator, grab Storage Explorer, put in the key, and you've now got the level of access you need within the storage account to do whatever it is that you're going to do. So in my case here, I logged on to my account, so I get to see all my storage accounts. And so here's the one that we were working with earlier. We can see all our containers, file shares, tables, queues. I can work with them, create a new queue, create a new file share, create a new blob container. And so I'm going to call this one uploads. They've all got to be lowercase. If you try to make an uppercase letter, it'll give you an error. And then I can work with this just like it's a Windows Explorer type file. And I think I can actually just do drag and drop. And so that'll actually upload that file directly into the container for me. So there you go. I can now get a URL for the file. So here's the actual URL for the file. Now this is set to be a private container, so this URL doesn't actually give me access to anything. If I were to change it to be the permission level on the container to allow anonymous access, I could just navigate to this URL, watch the video. We'll come in and delete this. Delete all the files, and we're done. And then so the third way is we can use something like PowerShell. Now I'm actually, most people will use the PowerShell ISE or PowerShell itself. As of late, I've become rather partial to using Visual Studio Code for some of this. I use Visual Studio Code for a lot of things within Azure, things like managing ARM templates, things like managing the PowerShell scripts that go into things, text files, documentation, markdown documents, just any number of things. So I've become rather partial to using this tool. And so lately I've been using it for PowerShell as well. And so here I want to point out kind of a couple of things. So I've run a couple of commands to actually log on to my Azure account. And then this is kind of the important one here, is that I've returned a copy of the storage account as an object, and then I've gathered or captured what's referred to as the storage account context. Now it's a subtle thing, but most Azure commands, get Azure RM something, are how most of the commands operate. So get Azure Resource Manager Group, Resource Group, Storage Account, Virtual Machine, etc. Once you get the storage context, you're working directly within the storage account. So the RM is not included in any of the PowerShell commands. So it's things like get Azure Storage Account. And that will actually get you the contents of the storage account, or get Azure Storage blob. Right? And so it's first thing it's going to ask you for is a container and then a context. So what we're going to do here is just manipulate the contents of a container. Get myself out of this console here. There we go. Using Azure PowerShell. And so you can see from up top, I've got the commands pre-typed because I'm not one to make live typos if I can at all avoid it. But as an example, so a new Azure storage container, this will create, what is essentially a container or a folder within a storage account. So we need the container name. So this is really just doing what I did in the portal and also what I did in the Storage Explorer. And it wants the context, which is the equivalent of the connection. Right? So now with the context object, it knows exactly which storage account we're talking about. Have a look at our containers. Lists them, and now we can go ahead and upload a file. Now I've already run a couple of these commands, so you can see I've got the path to this local file, this video file, already loaded. So all I've got to do is run this set Azure Storage Blob content. Now it doesn't sound like, you know, upload file, download file like you would work with in something like FTP, because what you're doing is you're saying, hey, we want a storage blob. A blob is a binary large object, which can be anything, including a file. I want to take one of those in the Azure storage container and set its contents to equal the contents of something that's local on my system. So on my local system, the corresponding blob is the video file. So I'm simply saying the local file, the container, and the blob, I want to put the contents of the local file in, and then the connection data, which is the context. So I run that, and it goes through and actually uploads the file. And if we go back to our Storage Explorer and just do a little refresh back here, we can see I've gone ahead and done just that. And then removing it in PowerShell is essentially the reverse of that process. In fact, a little bit simpler, because I don't need to delete the file. I can just delete the container. Remove Azure storage container, the connection context. Well, we'll do the container first, and then the context. Confirm the action, which you can also do with a force parameter. I think it's a force parameter, or maybe a confirm parameter. There's a parameter that lets you confirm that automatically, so you can automate. Refresh, and you'll see that those things have now gone away. So there you have it. That's how you can begin to manipulate the contents of an Azure storage account using the tools they give you, the portal, the Azure Storage Explorer, and Azure PowerShell. Now, as a closing note, there's a lot of cloud storage explorers out there. This is the one Microsoft provides for Azure, but there's a lot of third-party storage explorers that are cross-cloud compatible. For example, they'll let you talk to, you know, Amazon and Google and Dropbox and Azure and all these different, you know, OneDrive and Google Drive and all these different kind of storage, cloud storage providers at once, and move files between them, and sort of give you this single pane of glass across all your different storage accounts. So those work much the same as this. And then finally, the Azure Unified Shell, the Azure CLI, has the equivalent of upload download files, so you can do it in there as well. So there you have it, different ways of working with the contents of an Azure storage account.